Okay, so you found the home that you want, okay? Now we actually have to get the plan together. We have to assemble the bid, the strongest bid that you can possibly pull together, because in this hot market, you're gonna be competing with a lot of other people, and we wanna make sure that you put the best foot forward, okay? There are 7 elements to a strong bid, and not any one element trumps the other, okay? So let's get into them. Number 1, of course, is price. The higher, the better. That being said, highest price doesn't always win because there are a lot of other factors. Number 2 is your financing plan. All cash is better than a 50% down, better than 20% down, better than 10% down. That being said, all cash doesn't always win. I have one with as low as 3.5%, okay? Because again, there are these other factors out there. Number 3 is days escrow close, meaning how many days do you need to close the deal? From the seller's perspective, obviously the seller wants their money sooner. So if the seller has a choice between a 7-day close, where they get their money in 7 days, versus a 30-day close, of course the seller's gonna want 7 days. They want their cash sooner. So in all cash offers, typically the fastest I've seen an all cash offer close is, I think, 4 days. Usually all cash takes about 7 days to 10 days to close. However, if you're working with a bank or a lender, it's likely that you're gonna need 30 days, okay? Which is why it's important that we look at all these other factors to get a tight bid so that you're gonna be competitive even with all cash offers, okay? So that's days escrow. Now, the next 3, number 4, 5, and 6, are the contingencies: inspection, appraisal, and loan. Now let me explain these. You're the buyer, I'm the seller. You make an offer, let's say for $1 million on my house, and I accept. And I say, okay, now that I've accepted your offer, I want you to demonstrate to me that you're serious about closing this deal. Mr. or Mrs. Buyer, you have to deposit 3%, the initial deposit into escrow. So in this case, it would be $30,000, so that I know that you're gonna close the deal. Now, let's just go through escrow. Let's say when you make an offer to the seller, you include what's called a 7-day inspection contingency. What that allows you to do is, within those first 7 days of escrow, you can bring in your own inspector, your own foundation inspector, roof inspector, what have you, your friends, your family. If there's anything you don't like about the property, if the roof has a hole in it, if the sink is leaking, if you don't like the smell of the carpet, if you don't like the wallpapers, you can cancel the contract, take your money back, walk away, no harm done. That's the inspection contingency. Now, let's say there's nothing wrong with the property, you're okay with it physically, and so you want to move on through the loan approval process. Now, before the bank can actually lend to you based on $1 million purchase price, the bank has to have something in their files to certify this property is actually worth $1 million. So the bank will then send out their own appraiser or a vendor that they hire to go out and appraise this property. So let's say the appraiser comes back and says, you know what? This house is not worth $1 million, it's only worth $900,000, which means that extra $100,000 has to be cash money out of your pocket in order to make this deal to happen, because the bank's not gonna lend to you based on $1 million, they're only gonna lend to you based on $900,000. But if you have an appraisal contingency in place, you can tell, hey, Michael, Mr. Michael Seller, your house isn't worth $1 million, it's only worth $900,000. I have an appraisal contingency in place, which means that Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, you can cancel the contract, take your money back, walk away, no harm done. Okay. Now, let's say that physically there's nothing wrong with the property and it appraises for the purchase price. Now you actually have to go through the loan approval process. It's just like filling out a form for a credit card, whereas with a credit card, in about 5 minutes, you'll know whether or not you get a credit card. Same thing here with getting a loan to buy a house, but because the house is so big, it's gonna take a lot more time to get through that approval process, which is why it can take up to 30 days for escrow to close. Now, during that time, for whatever reason that you don't get approved for a loan, if you have a loan contingency in your purchase agreement, you can tell the seller, hey, Mr. Michael, I couldn't get the loan. The bank won't give me the loan, but I have a loan contingency in place, which means, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, you can cancel the contract, take your money back, walk away, no harm done. Now, those are the 3 contingencies. They're there in place to protect you. However, keep in mind The San Francisco Bay Area is one of the most competitive markets in the nation. It is very common for buyers to waive all 3 contingencies because they have lost so many times that they realize that they need to be more competitive. I'm not telling you that you have to remove those contingencies, and of course everything's on a case-by-case basis, but I do want to raise it now in case you do get into a competitive situation that you may have to take on more risk in order to win the house, okay? So those are the contingencies. Now, last but not least is my negotiating strategy that sets me apart from other agents. When we assemble your bid, I make sure it's packaged professionally with a cover sheet, and it's done in a way that's easy for the listing agent to read, to understand, and digest. Me, having sold many houses, I frequently get offers that actually aren't put together very well. They're hard to understand, they have spelling mistakes, and it just makes that buyer look much more unattractive to my sellers. So I know how to make your offer look professional, number 1. Number 2, I actually call the listing agent. I let them know who I am. I introduce who you are to them. I let them know that we are professional boutique. We focus on the Bay Area. They're dealing with a San Francisco native. So that way they understand how we work, and also they remember our offer so it doesn't get lost in the shuffle. In addition to that, once we submit your offer, I don't just let it go. I pick up the phone and I call the listing agent. I ask them, hey, where are we? Where do we stand? Are we first, second, or third? Oh, we're fourth. Okay, how far off are we? What do the terms look like? How many all cash offers are there? What I do is I get as much information as I can from that listing agent and bring it back to you so that you can decide if you want to adjust your bid to be more competitive. In a way, it's kind of like a second chance program to make sure that you don't leave anything on the table, okay? It's not to say that you need to change your terms or increase your price, but at least I'm giving you information on what the market is doing. So if you don't win this time, at least next time around, you'll have better information about how to be prepared, okay? And that sums up how to assemble a strong bid.